images near the Strait of Hormuz off Iran, where new attacks are now sending oil prices on another wild ride today. This is a Thai-flagged ship, one of at least 3 vessels that have been struck today in that critical waterway. Thailand's Ministry of Transport says.
Breaking news from the Strait of Hormuz. April 4th, 2026. Iranian Revolutionary Guard forces have launched 3 Fattah-1 hypersonic ballistic missiles at a United States-flagged oil tanker transiting under U.S. Navy escort. All 3 missiles reached their target. The MV Pacific Sovereign, a fully loaded supertanker carrying 2 million barrels of crude oil, is burning. 11 civilian merchant mariners are dead. An American destroyer escorting the tanker has taken shrapnel damage. And what U.S. Central Command is confirming right now? The retaliatory strike package was already airborne before the tanker's hull fractured. 8 minutes from first impact to the complete annihilation of every Iranian military asset within 400 kilometers of the strait. Now, as Pentagon sources are calling it the single most devastating naval retaliation in the history of the Persian Gulf. The Strait of Hormuz, 0347 hours local time, April 4th. The water is flat, dead calm. The kind of stillness that only comes when the wind dies completely and the sea turns into black glass stretching to every horizon. The air carries the faint petroleum smell that never leaves this corridor, the scent of 21 million barrels of oil passing through this choke point every single day. Through that darkness, the MV Pacific Sovereign pushes south at 14 knots. She is a very large crude carrier, displacement loaded, 320,000 deadweight tons. Length, 1,100 feet. Draft, 72 feet. Her hull sits so deep in the water that from certain angles she looks less like a ship and more like a floating steel island. She carries a crew of 28 civilian merchant mariners, Americans, Filipinos, Greeks, Indians, men who move the world's energy supply through the most dangerous waterway on Earth and do it every single week without thinking about the missiles pointed at them from the mountains above Bandar Abbas. 2,000 meters off her port beam, the USS Laboon, an Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer, maintains escort position, 96 vertical launch cells, SPY-6 radar sweeping the sky. Her crew is at modified battle stations because every American warship that enters the Strait of Hormuz in April 2026 operates at heightened readiness. It is not enough. Nothing would have been enough for what Iran is about to do, because in 7 minutes, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is going to commit the single most catastrophic strategic error since Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. If you want the full truth about what happens when Iran fires hypersonic missiles at American protected shipping, hit like right now. Because this story needs to reach everyone who still believes Iran can strike American interests and survive the next 8 minutes. The MV Pacific Sovereign is not a warship. She carries no weapons. She has no armor. She has no defensive systems. What she carries is 2 million barrels of Saudi crude oil bound for refineries in South Korea, cargo worth approximately $160 million at current market prices. She is flying the American flag because her registered owner, Atlantic Maritime Holdings, is incorporated in Houston, Texas. That flag means something. It means the full weight of the United States Navy stands behind her right to transit international waters unmolested. It means that any attack on her hull is legally and operationally identical to an attack on American sovereign territory. The IRGC knows this. They have been briefed on this. Their own legal advisors have warned them about this. They do it anyway. At 0351 hours, deep inside a tunnel complex carved into the Zagros mountain foothills, 17 kilometers northeast of Bandar Abbas, a Revolutionary Guard missile battery receives final launch authorization from IRGC Aerospace Force headquarters. The battery operates 3 Fattah-1 hypersonic ballistic missiles, Iran's most advanced weapon system, range 1,400 kilometers, terminal velocity Mach 13. Hypersonic glide vehicle capable of maneuvering during re-entry to defeat missile defense systems. Iran has publicly claimed this weapon is unstoppable. They have displayed it at military parades. They have called it the shield of the Islamic Revolution. Tonight, for the first time in history, they are going to fire it at a real target. 3 missiles launch in a 4-second ripple sequence at 0352 hours. Flight time to the Pacific Sovereign's current position, 3 minutes, 40 seconds. The USS Laboon's SPY-6 radar detects the launch signatures at 0352 hours, 14 seconds. 3 ballistic tracks rising from the Iranian coast. The Combat Information Center classifies the threat in 9 seconds. SM-6 missiles begin launching at 03:52 hours, 31 seconds. But here is the problem that every American naval officer has feared since Iran first unveiled the Fattah-1. A Mach 13 terminal approach gives the defender a window measured in single-digit seconds. The SM-6 is designed to intercept ballistic missiles. It has done so in testing, but 3 simultaneous hypersonic targets arriving on a single aim point with maneuvering capability during the terminal phase. This is beyond the tested envelope. The Laboon fires 4 SM-6 missiles. One intercepts the first Fattah-1 at an altitude of 18 kilometers, a successful kill. The warhead fragments scatter across 3 square kilometers of open water. The second and third Fattah-1 missiles execute terminal maneuvers. SM-6 interceptors chase them. One detonates close, but not close enough. The second misses entirely. At 03:55 hours, 41 seconds, 2 Fattah-1 hypersonic ballistic missiles strike the MV Pacific Sovereign. The first hits amidships, penetrating the deck and detonating inside the No. 4 cargo tank. 2 million barrels of crude oil and a 1,000-pound hypersonic warhead meet in the same confined space at the same instant. The explosion splits the tanker's hull along a 90-meter fracture line. The fireball rises 400 feet into the night sky and turns the black water orange for 2 kilometers in every direction. The second missile hits the engine room. The Pacific Sovereign's propulsion, electrical generation, and steering cease to exist simultaneously. The ship begins settling by the stern immediately. USS Laboon takes shrapnel from the tanker explosion across her port side. Her forward gun mount is damaged. 2 sailors suffer blast injuries. The Laboon's captain orders his ship to close the burning tanker for rescue operations while simultaneously transmitting the combat report that will activate what Iran does not know is already waiting. You are Ordinary Seaman Daniel Reyes, 26 years old, from Galveston, Texas. You joined the Merchant Marine because your father worked the shipping lanes for 31 years, and because the pay was good enough to cover your mother's medical bills and still put something aside for the house you have been planning to buy. You were in the mess hall when the first missile hit. The ceiling came down, the lights went out, the floor tilted at an angle that told your body before your brain could process it. The ship is breaking apart. You find your way to the weather deck in darkness, by memory. By touching bulkheads, you have walked past 1,000 times. When you reach open air, the heat from the burning crude hits you like a wall. You can see men in the water. You can hear them. You grab a life ring and throw it toward a voice. You do this 4 times. You pull 2 men to the railing. You do not think about missiles or Iran or geopolitics. You think about the men screaming in burning oil 30 feet below you. That is who sails these tankers. Not statistics, not collateral damage. Men with fathers and house plans and mothers who need help with medical bills. Comment Sovereign below if you believe these merchant sailors deserve justice, and if you think Iran should answer for every life lost on that tanker tonight. Here is what the IRGC command structure celebrating in their operations center at Bandar Abbas did not know. Mamor could not have known what no amount of Russian satellite intelligence or Chinese signals intercept sharing had revealed to them. 9 months before this night, following Iran's successful test of the Fattah-1 hypersonic system and intelligence assessments indicating IRGC intent to use it against commercial shipping under American escort, U.S. Central Command submitted a contingency strike package to the Secretary of Defense. The package was titled Operation Steel Anvil. It identified every Iranian military installation within 400 kilometers of the Strait of Hormuz that contributes to ballistic missile, anti-ship, coastal defense, or maritime surveillance capabilities. 53 targets, missile tunnel complexes, launch batteries, radar installations, command centers, fuel storage facilities, ammunition depots, drone bases. Naval staging areas. The package included pre-calculated weapons assignments for every strike platform available in the Central Command Theater. Deconflicted flight corridors, time-on-target sequencing engineered for simultaneous arrival across all 53 aim points. The Secretary of Defense signed pre-delegated launch authority for Operation Steel Anvil 9 months ago. No Oval Office authorization required at the moment of execution. No interagency review. No diplomatic consultation window. The trigger condition was specific and unambiguous. Confirmed hostile fire from Iranian territory resulting in destruction of or casualties aboard a U.S.-flagged vessel in international waters. At 03:55 hours on April 4th, Iran met that condition precisely. But type yes if you want to see all 53 Iranian targets destroyed in the next 8 minutes. because what comes next is the most devastating precision strike campaign ever executed in the Persian Gulf. The strike authorization propagates to 6 separate platforms simultaneously at 0357 hours, less than 2 minutes after the Pacific Sovereign took her fatal hits. USS Florida, an Ohio-class guided missile submarine pre-positioned in the Gulf of Oman, begins her launch sequence. She carries 154 Tomahawk cruise missiles. 102 of them are already programmed with steel anvil target coordinates updated 16 hours ago via satellite data link. USS Laboon, despite her own shrapnel damage, confirms her vertical launch system is operational and begins firing her assigned Tomahawk allocation. Fattah Shiloh, a Ticonderoga-class guided missile cruiser operating in the northern Arabian Sea, fires 26 Tomahawks in rapid sequence. 2 B-2 Spirit stealth bombers launched from Diego Garcia 6 hours ago on a planned deterrence orbit now receive their execute order. Each carries 16 GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrators, 30,000-pound bunker busters designed to reach targets buried under 60 feet of reinforced concrete and mountain rock. Their assigned targets, the Fattah-1 tunnel storage complex and the IRGC Aerospace Force Command bunker, both buried deep in the Zagros foothills. And from the deck of the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, operating 400 kilometers south in the Arabian Sea, 16 F/A-18E, Super Hornets from Strike Fighter Squadron 143 launch with full weapons loads. I-64 AGM-158C long-range anti-ship missiles reprogrammed for land attack against coastal military installations. Total weapons committed from authorization to last launch, 8 minutes, 4 seconds. Total precision-guided munitions converging on Iranian territory, 218 weapons targeting 53 installations, all timed to arrive within the same 7-minute window. Share this video right now so the world understands what happens when a pre-authorized retaliation doctrine activates, and why Iran had 0 seconds to react once those Fattah-1 missiles left their tunnels. First impacts begin at 0409 hours, 14 minutes after the Pacific Sovereign was hit. The Fattah-1 tunnel complex northeast of Bandar Abbas, the exact facility from which tonight's 3 missiles were launched. This installation is carved 200 feet into solid granite. Iran considered it invulnerable. 2 GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrators arrive 8 seconds apart. The first drives through the mountain face and detonates at a depth of 40 feet, fracturing the internal structure. The second follows the blast channel and detonates inside the primary storage gallery. The tunnel collapses along its entire 300-meter length. Every remaining Fattah-1 missile stored inside, intelligence estimates suggest between 8 and 12 additional units, is buried under 10,000 tons of shattered rock. The launch crews, the maintenance teams, the battery commander who pressed the button 4 hours ago, entombed in the weapon system they believed made them untouchable. IRGC Aerospace Force Command bunker at Shiraz, the headquarters that issued tonight's launch authorization. This facility sits under 4 stories of reinforced concrete with a hardened communications suite connecting it to every missile battery in southern Iran. 2 more GBU-57 penetrators. The first breaches the roof. The second detonates on the operations floor. The facility implodes. Every officer in the chain of command that authorized tonight's strike against the Pacific Sovereign dies in the same structure they believed would protect them from any American weapon. Bandar Abbas Naval Complex, Iran's primary IRGC naval headquarters for straight operations. 22 Tomahawks converge from 3 different approach vectors simultaneously. The headquarters building, a 6-story structure housing the Maritime Operations Center that monitored tonight's attack, takes 6 direct hits and pancakes into a debris field. The weapons storage bunkers receive 4 missiles each. Secondary explosions from stored Noor and Qatar anti-ship missiles create a chain detonation that levels adjacent buildings across a 400-meter radius. The dry dock facilities, the maintenance bays, the communications center, systematically erased. Keshem Island Forward Operating Base, staging point for 63 IRGC fast attack boats armed with anti-ship missiles, 12 Tomahawks. The pier complex detonates as missile-armed speedboats still moored to their berths explode one after another in a cascading chain of weapons cook-offs. The fuel depot, 200,000 liters of marine diesel, ignites into a column of fire visible from the Omani coast 65 kilometers away. The barracks, the operations building, the boat maintenance facility, reduced to burning rubble in under 90 seconds. Jask Coastal Radar Station, the long-range surveillance installation that provided targeting data enabling tonight's Fattah-1 strikes. Without this radar, feeding real-time coordinates to the missile batteries, the attack on the Pacific Sovereign would have been impossible. 8 Tomahawks. The phased array antenna disappears in the first 2 impacts. The data processing center, the generator building, the communications tower, all destroyed. Iranian maritime surveillance across a 250-kilometer sector goes permanently blind. But on 19 additional targets, mobile radar units, communications relay nodes, ammunition storage bunkers, secondary missile positions, and coastal defense batteries scattered across a 400-kilometer arc from Jask to Bushehr received their proportional weapons allocation from the remaining Tomahawks and JASSM strikes. Total strike duration from first impact to final detonation, 6 minutes, 47 seconds. In that window, Iran's entire integrated anti-ship warfare capability across the southern coastline transitions from the most concentrated maritime threat in the Middle East into scattered fields of burning steel and collapsed concrete. If the scale of this retaliation shocked you, comment steel anvil below, because what you just watched is not revenge. But it is the mathematical consequence that every Iranian commander will carry in their calculations for the next generation. Now let us examine the exchange with clinical precision. Iran's attack, 3 Fattah-1 hypersonic ballistic missiles against 1 unarmed oil tanker. 11 civilian merchant mariners killed, 9 wounded, 1 supertanker destroyed, 2 million barrels of crude oil burning on the surface of the Strait of Hormuz in the worst maritime environmental disaster since the Deepwater Horizon. 1 U.S. Navy destroyer with moderate shrapnel damage. America's response? 218 precision weapons against 53 military installations. Estimated 840 IRGC personnel killed. Iran's entire Fattah-1 hypersonic missile inventory destroyed or buried. Coastal radar network across 400 kilometers eliminated. 5 naval bases rendered permanently non-operational. Ballistic missile launch capability in the southern theater reduced by 92%. Anti-ship cruise missile stockpiles reduced by 78%. Drone strike infrastructure along the coastline eliminated entirely. The arithmetic is not proportional. It is not designed to be proportional. It is designed to be existential. 3 Iranian missiles fired. 218 American weapons returned. 11 civilians killed. 840 IRGC fighters killed. 1 tanker destroyed. 53 Iranian military facilities erased. Iran spent 3 of its most advanced weapons it spent 8 years developing with technology acquired from sources it will not publicly name, and earned in return the destruction of infrastructure that took 3 decades and an estimated $55 billion to construct. Infrastructure that cannot be rebuilt under current sanctions, cannot be replaced while American carrier groups maintain Persian Gulf presence, cannot be reconstituted as long as Operation Steel Anvil remains loaded, authorized, and aimed. The diplomatic fallout follows a trajectory that Tehran's foreign ministry was not prepared for. Iran issues a statement within 90 minutes. The American tanker was engaged in hostile intelligence collection disguised as commercial transit. Iran acted to protect its territorial waters. Neighbor, the American retaliation constitutes a war crime. The statement lands while satellite imagery showing the burning remains of every major Iranian military installation on the southern coast circulates on every news network worldwide. The United States releases the full navigational track of the MV Pacific Sovereign, unambiguously in the internationally recognized shipping lane in international waters, transmitting on all required maritime frequencies. The communications intercepts proving launch authorization originated from IRGC Aerospace Force headquarters are declassified within 4 hours. The evidence reaches the United Nations Security Council, NATO, and every Gulf Cooperation Council capital before sunrise. Saudi Arabia condemns the attack as an assault on the global energy supply chain and offers expanded basing for American naval assets. The UAE opens Jebel Ali to emergency repair operations for USS Laboon. Bahrain announces accelerated expansion of U.S. Fifth Fleet facilities. India, whose nationals were among the tanker's crew, issues its strongest statement against Iran in 2 decades. Japan and South Korea, both dependent on oil transiting the strait, issue joint statements supporting freedom of navigation enforcement. Even China, which has quietly maintained energy partnerships with Tehran, issues a carefully neutral statement calling for restraint from all parties and notably does not condemn the American response. The isolation is total. Iran attacked a commercial vessel carrying oil that the world economy requires to function. And they killed civilians from 4 different nations. They did it with their most prestigious weapons system, and the world watched America erase the infrastructure behind that weapon system in 8 minutes and said, "We understand why. Here is what changes permanently after the Pacific Sovereign incident. Here is why 8 minutes on April 4th restructures every Iranian military decision for the next 20 years. The pre-authorized response doctrine embedded in Operation Steel Anvil establishes a deterrence reality with a single, irreversible principle at its foundation. Attacks on American-flagged vessels do not initiate a policy review. They do not trigger proportional response calculations. They do not begin a diplomatic de-escalation window. They trigger preloaded, pre-aimed, and pre-authorized devastation on a timeline that gives Iranian commanders no opportunity to evacuate their bunkers, disperse their assets, alert their crews, or transmit a single order. The commander who authorizes a missile launch against American shipping does not merely authorize that launch. He simultaneously authorizes the destruction of his own command center, his own missile batteries, his own radar stations, his own naval bases, his own tunnel complexes, his own personnel, his own career, and his own survival. The 8-minute response is not a demonstration of American reaction speed. It is not a showcase of technological superiority. It is pre-planned annihilation that was authorized, targeted, programmed, and loaded into launch systems 9 months before Iran fired a single Fattah-1. And the decision to retaliate was made before the Pacific Sovereign ever entered the strait. All that was required was for Iran to do exactly what American intelligence predicted they would do. They did. The response was already in the air. The wreckage of the MV Pacific Sovereign burns for 11 days. The oil slick extends across 97 square kilometers of the strait before containment operations take hold. Ordinary seaman Daniel Reyes survives. He pulled 4 men from the water before rescue teams from USS Laboon reached the survivors. He receives the Merchant Marine Distinguished Service Medal. His mother watches the ceremony from Galveston on a video call. The house he has been saving for, he puts down the deposit 3 weeks later. The 11 merchant mariners killed are repatriated to 4 different countries. And the 6 Americans among them receive memorial services at the National Maritime Center in Virginia. They were 24 years old, 29 years old, 41 years old, 53 years old. They had children and retirement plans and mortgages half paid off, and wives who kissed them goodbye expecting them home in 6 weeks. They were sailing through a strait that 21 million barrels of oil pass through every day because someone has to move the energy that keeps the world running. They paid the price that comes with that job in the most dangerous waterway on Earth. And the response to their deaths ensured that the lesson reached every IRGC operations center from Bandar Abbas to Tehran to the deepest tunnel complex in the Zagros Mountains. The Strait of Hormuz does not change on April 4th. Iranian territory still borders it. And Iranian guns still overlook it. Iranian officers still stand watch above it. But every one of those officers, every battery commander who studies his targeting display, every submarine captain who tracks an American escort, every IRGC admiral who reviews the morning intelligence brief now carries one piece of knowledge they did not have before April 4th. They know what 3 Fattah-1 missiles cost them. They know what 8 minutes means. They know the response is already loaded, already aimed, already authorized, and already waiting in launch tubes across 6 different platforms they cannot locate and cannot strike first. That is the lesson the Strait of Hormuz teaches on April 4th, 2026. That is what pre-authorized devastation looks like when you are standing at the receiving end and the clock has already started. And so I want to ask you something directly. Knowing what you now know about Operation Steel Anvil, knowing that the retaliation was pre-authorized, pre-aimed, and pre-loaded into 218 weapon systems before Iran ever opened those tunnel doors, would you have given the order to fire those 3 Fattah-1 missiles, knowing that 8 minutes later every facility you command would be collapsing into rubble? Drop a comment below telling me whether you think this 8-minute response was justified, or whether America crossed the line. And if you want to see more scenarios where military miscalculations meet overwhelming consequences, subscribe right now because this channel breaks down the strategies, the weapons systems, and the split-second decisions that determine how modern conflict actually ends when someone makes the mistake of striking first. Hit that subscribe button. This channel brings you the stories that show exactly what happens in 21st century warfare when someone is brave enough, or reckless enough, to pull the trigger first.